Enough is enough. Bishop T.D. Jakes made such statements following a tragic series of events that rocked his reputation and his health. Behind the stirring sermons and widespread impact, he was fighting a storm that put his fortitude, his faith, and his reputation to the test. The narrative that would stun millions of people began with what transpired behind the pulpit. Since establishing the Potter's House in 1996, Bishop T.D. Jakes has been a dominant figure at the pulpit for decades. With over 30,000 members, his voice has given them direction and hope, making it one of the biggest and most significant churches in the U.S. Stadiums have been filled with his remarks. His teachings have been heard on continents. And he was always regarded as unstoppable when he was on stage. The image was destroyed on November 24, 2024. What started out as just another stirring Sunday sermon became a scene nobody saw coming. Jakes had been giving his congregation the kind of lecture they had grown accustomed to hearing for almost an hour. His body started to shake as he put down the microphone. He appeared to be pausing to collect his breath at first, but a few moments later he was trembling violently and hunching over his stool. As thousands of people watched in startled silence in the sanctuary and online, members of his crew rushed onto the platform and surrounded him. The identical question was asked by millions of people worldwide as the moment swiftly went viral on social media. Bishop Jakes, what happened to you? Unaware that his body was failing him, he believed it to be preaching through adrenaline. The reality only struck him when the service was over and he took a seat. His body gave way as the adrenaline drained out. His congregation was startled by the sudden vulnerability of a guy who had been so strong and solid. Many believed it to be dehydration or fatigue. However, the reality that awaited them at the hospital was much more horrifying. He believed that the worst was over. However, all would alter when the physicians made their next revelation. Few could comprehend the gravity of what had just transpired when Bishop T.D. Jakes was removed from the pulpit and transported to the hospital. As medical personnel hurried to stabilize him in the ambulance, Jakes was not entirely aware of what was going on. It wasn't until I arrived to the hospital in an ambulance that I truly realized what was happening to me on stage. He then revealed. A doctor leaned in and spoke to him, delivering words that would reverberate throughout his life, revealing the startling reality. You've suffered a severe heart attack. This wasn't your typical heart attack. A clot has entirely blocked the flow of blood to the right side of his heart. The diagnosis was confusing to Jakes. I didn't have the traditional symptoms of a heart attack. Prior to the sermon, he acknowledged, there had been no dramatic collapse, no searing pain, and no numbness. I simply kind of fell asleep instead, he explained. What it was, I had no idea. He was chilled by what the doctors later said. According to the doctor, I would have died by the time I arrived 5 minutes later. In order to remove the clot, doctors performed emergency surgery quickly. Amazingly, Jakes remained conscious during the entire process. I was awake when the surgeons worked. He remembered that they never put him to sleep. Technology is incredible. The fact that he was awake during the repair of his heart further added to the gravity of the situation for a man who had dedicated his life to sharing his faith and miracles with others. Jakes acknowledged that watching the video of his collapse was nearly impossible. The chair was not where I was. I didn't have the same experience as it seems. I find it difficult to watch that video because they had to pry the microphone from me, he stated. It was a horrifying sight to all present in the sanctuary on that particular day. However, he believed that the event had transported him to a whole different place. They had to pry it from my grasp. However, I imagined myself in a calm, serene, white-enveloped, cloud-enveloped space. I was heading out. As a pastor, he saw what transpired as a spiritual experience as well as a medical emergency. In hindsight, it was truly an honor to be on the other side and see a brief view of what that would be like or, for me, what it was like at the time. His reflection struck me as very remarkable. I had my entire church after that, and by my whole church I mean everyone on the planet, not simply the members of the congregation. Prayers are being sent by people everywhere. Thank you so much. Jakes' health problem came at an odd time. It took place at a time when he was being accused of crimes that would have destroyed his reputation. Many started to question whether his body had been pushed to its limit by the stress of this crisis. Bishop T.D. Jakes has long been regarded as one of America's most significant preachers. His name was associated with community service, religion, and hope. However, as is sometimes the case with public personalities of his caliber, praise was equally met with criticism. His private life had been the subject of rumors in the past, but they had rarely taken off. That changed in late 2024 when sworn statements including charges from two brothers, Richard Youngblood and Dwayne Blood, threatened to destroy everything Jake had worked so hard to achieve. The accusations were disturbing and graphic. Dwayne Youngblood, in his statement, recounted a conversation he had as a teenager at a private residence where Jake was staying. The paper said, "He pulled me close and tried to kiss me as I was about to leave." According to Youngblood, Jake called him the following morning and informed him that when he arrived to town, he wanted me to be the only person with whom he had a close relationship. The charges didn't stop there. The Reverend Richard Edwin Youngblood, Dwayne's older brother, also stepped forward. He stated in his testimony that he had heard Dwayne recount Jake's wrongdoing years prior. "I sensed Elder Jake climb into my bed that night while I was lying in bed," but Richard also asserted his own claims, stating, "Jake climbed into his bed on a church trip." "Youngblood, do you feel that?" he questioned, pressing his body against me, according to the December 2024 statement. In addition to being untrue, Jake found the claims to be extremely offensive. In response, his legal team questioned Dwayne Youngblood's integrity by citing his criminal convictions for sexual assault and corruption of kids. Additionally, they pointed out that the story of Richard Youngblood only came to light after Jake rejected his application for a job almost 10 years ago, claiming he was unqualified. In order to address this matter, his legal team filed a defamation case the day after he passed out on stage and was briefly admitted to the hospital. Although it was a risky move, Jake had to make it. The lawsuit was aimed at Dwayne Youngblood, a man who had made extremely alarming claims that endangered Jake's reputation, as well as the legacy he had cultivated over many years. Jake gave a clear explanation of his thinking. "All of this was happening while I found myself helping my wife recover from knee replacement surgery and while helping my brother navigate kidney failure," he said in a statement. "I had a health crisis on stage in front of my entire congregation as a result of this unjustified stress. This near-death experience was a turning moment for me as a guy who had never experienced any health issues before. Enough is enough." Jake's family was also thrust into the spotlight by the altercation. Dwayne stated in court documents that Jermaine, Jake's son, had texted him with what appeared to be a direct threat. He simply contacted Dwayne to alert him about someone else he didn't trust, according to Jermaine, who denied this. "There was no reason for me to say anything that I intended or meant to be threatening," Jermaine stated in her letter. It was observed he remembered, and Dwayne replied promptly. According to the charges, Jake was a groomer and a manipulator. Dwayne claimed that Jake had once assured him that he would provide for him financially for the rest of his life, but Jake flatly denied this. "I was struggling to keep my own family out of poverty at the time," he wrote. "I was not the Bishop T.D. Jake of today. I was a pastor with no substantial following and no financial resources." Jake's legal team cited old pictures of his modest storefront church and house as evidence that he was a modest preacher in a small town who was having a hard time making ends meet. He reminded the court that his ministry didn't become well-known nationwide until he met evangelist Carlton Pearson in 1992 and gave his now famous "Woman, Thou Art Loosed" speech the following year. Another layer money was exposed by the court documents. Tyrone Blackburn, Dwayne's attorney, has written a letter requesting $6 million to resolve the allegations. Jake described it as an attempt to steal money. This entire slander campaign started soon after the public announcement of Wells Fargo's promise of up to $1 billion for community rebuilding. He continued by saying, "I suspect a larger network is involved in this scheme. all anticipating a share of this attempted money grab. Dwayne, meanwhile, was creating his own public platform. He made a website where he could be hired as a trauma recovery speaker, coach, or presenter. He also hinted at an upcoming book that would reveal everything about Jake. Jake saw it as evidence that the charges were a part of a larger plot to capitalize on the controversy. When asked about it, his representatives merely stated that it was a pending legal matter. He was still recovering from the medical incident, they said. However, Jake's recuperation was about more than just his health. Now, his ministry, his reputation, and even the name of his family were at stake. He would return, but not the same guy who had faced death head-on, because many would be shocked by the decisions he made afterward. After his near-death experience, TD Jakes returned to his church family, but not with the towering energy and booming voice that his audience had grown accustomed to. He assured them via a live stream that he was still alive, thankful, and clinging to his faith just a few days after he left the hospital. There were tears and relief when he spoke from his recovery. The event was charged with emotion by the time he stood before his congregation once more on New Year's Eve. Now the guy who had nearly vanished talked with a fresh understanding of how fleeting life was. This near-death experience was more than just a warning. It was a watershed moment. Jake has led the Potter's House for many years, providing vision and unrelenting energy to a membership of over 30. He now declared that he was unable to bear the entire burden by himself. Jake said that the health issue made him confront reality. "I didn't want the church left struggling, trying to figure out where we go from here after my health incident," he added. "That was not what I wanted to occur. I've witnessed many people hold on to things they've built for a long time before murdering them." He started to distance himself from day-to-day leadership. Jake said on July 6, 2025, that his daughter Sarah Jakes Roberts and her spouse Tay Roberts would take over the church's Potter's House responsibilities. His church was rocked by the announcement. The future would now belong to a new generation, yet Jake had the Potter's House identity for decades. Sarah, who is only 36, acknowledged that the task was difficult. Nobody, in my opinion, could assume this position without experiencing some degree of anxiety. "Working through all the different emotions has been exciting, and it will be exciting to see what comes next," she said. Jake referred to the move as a changing of the guard. T also noted, "The weight of responsibility of leading an incredible ministry founded by an incredible man is a balance between exciting and sobriety. They haven't completely gotten rid of me," he asserted, "and I'm still going to minister, preach, and serve as the board chairman. The best way to train someone is to let them watch you do it, then let them do it with you. And finally, to let them do it while you watch," Jake explained. This wasn't a sudden change, though, as he had been involving the couple more deeply in the ministry for years prior. Now, Sarah and Tay would be responsible for day-to-day pastoring and all those duties. "We are now in the third stage of letting them do it while I watch." Sarah's journey to the pulpit was anything but straightforward. She had her first child at the age of 14 and thought faith wasn't for her. But in 2010, after going through a difficult divorce, she started blogging about her difficulties and was shocked to learn that people were finding solace in her words. As a tech entrepreneur growing up in Watts, Toe never dreamed of becoming a pastor until he was in his mid-20s. When he says, "I really started getting serious about God, got touched by God in the church, and began to tell everybody around me how amazing it was. That's when she realized she could minister authentically without pretending to be perfect." Giving the Potter's House to Sarah and Tay wasn't the end for Jake. Rather, it was a new chapter. He would continue to serve as chairman, providing guidance from the sidelines while his daughter and son-in-law took on the daily responsibilities of leadership. In 2004, he founded One Church International in Los Angeles, which grew to thousands of members and over 1 million YouTube subscribers. Let's go back in time and see where it all started. Pastor Jakes was born in South Charleston, West Virginia on June 9, 1957. The congregation applauded his bravery to take a step back before it was too late. With his public image shattered and controversy growing, the roots of his journey. His past, his faith, and his family would come under new light. As the youngest of 3 children, he grew up in a working-class family that valued community, faith, and perseverance. His mother, Odith, taught home economics, and his father, Ernest, operated a janitorial service. When his father developed kidney disease, young Thomas found himself taking care of him while still going to school. His childhood neighborhood was close-knit, and the community frequently leaned on one another in times of need. Those early years shaped him, teaching him what it meant to persevere through adversity while maintaining faith. This resilience served as the cornerstone of his later ministry, and by the time he was a teenager, Jake was drawn to faith work. His love for ministry was evident even as he served in small church groups, preaching whenever he could. In 1980, he was appointed pastor of Greater Emmanuel Temple of Faith, a small congregation of a few members in West Virginia. He preached week after week with a fiery conviction that attracted more people. In 1996, Jake took a risk that would define his life's work. He founded the Potter's House in Dallas, Texas. The church started out with about 50 families, but it quickly grew as his vision grew along with it. Over time, his reputation as a gifted preacher with a unique ability to connect biblical teaching to everyday struggles spread across communities. With over 30,000 members today, it is a megachurch. Jake's compassionate yet commanding preaching style touched millions of people through television broadcasts, conferences, and events that spread around the world. He spoke about healing, restoration, and personal empowerment themes that struck a deep chord with those dealing with brokenness in their own lives. As his impact increased, Jake moved into writing, filmmaking, and media projects. His best-selling book, Woman Thou Art Loose, and the movie adaptation made his teachings more widely known. By fusing storytelling and ministry, he was able to connect faith with popular culture, making him a national and international celebrity who was praised as a cultural voice as well as a preacher. However, despite his public success, Jake's personal life was beset by health crises that demanded a lot of him, both physically and emotionally. His brother was struggling with kidney failure, and his wife, Sarita, had to undergo knee replacement surgery, which required care and attention. Every Sunday, Jake stood in front of thousands, expected to inspire and uplift, even while privately carrying enormous burdens. He acknowledged that taking care of his loved ones while leading a large congregation left him exhausted, pushing him to the brink of a health crisis that manifested publicly in front of his congregation when he collapsed on stage. Rumors and controversies swirled behind the scenes, some related to money, some to his church management, and more recently, to serious accusations of misconduct that he vehemently denied, forcing him into legal battles that required emotional and financial resources, which Jake described as an unnecessary stress that affected his physical and mental health. Despite all of this, Jake remained a leader in faith. His story is one of ups and downs, of overcoming adversity to become a global celebrity while never escaping the difficulties that come with being human. A man molded by ups and downs when his legacy and his moral character are called into question. The real significance of Bishop T.D. Jakes' legacy is not in what he has already accomplished, but rather in what is yet to come. The Potter's House is currently in a new phase, led by his daughter Sarah Jakes Roberts and her husband Tay Roberts. And under their direction, the ministry is anticipated to develop in ways that combine the knowledge of the past with the new vitality of a younger generation. Let's see how far he will go to defend both. Jake's influence is also moving from the pulpit to long-term impact projects and his emphasis on education, entrepreneurship, and community redevelopment is showing no signs of slowing down. This shift guarantees that his vision will not end with him, but will be continued by voices that can reach today's audiences. His legacy will be measured not only by sermons, but by jobs created, communities revitalized, and lives lifted. Even as he retires from day-to-day church leadership, the organizations and partnerships he founded will continue to invest in neighborhoods, businesses, and people who need hope and opportunity. His candor about his struggles, including his health scares, family issues, and legal battles, will also be a defining feature of his future legacy. Jake has changed the public perception of spiritual leadership by demonstrating that it is not an untouchable image, but rather one that entails suffering, vulnerability, and resiliency. In the years to come, followers will probably witness the Potter's House grow through technology and media, continuing Jake's mission of reaching people worldwide. Conferences, digital ministries, and even movies and books will continue to be tools to spread his message. Many believe that this honesty is what will enable his story to continue inspiring others long after the controversies fade. What do you think about this pastor tragedy? Do you believe that moments like these redefine a leader's legacy? Tell us in the comments below. What began with his voice will become a chorus of leaders he has mentored, making his legacy less about one man and more about the movement he started.